Hello and welcome to Your Neighborhood Show. I'm Carolyn, and Your Neighborhood Show is about drawing out amazing stories of everyday people, of times in their lives when they have felt both connected as well as disconnected. Because that's the nature of life itself. We aim to normalize both connection as well as disconnection. None of us escape disconnection at some point in our life. So let's welcome it, experience it, and celebrate it. Because if you don't experience disconnection, how can you experience the magic of connection? Hello and welcome. Our guest today is the amazing young Tom Robinson. I met Tom probably about a couple of months ago at a conference of an organization called Sailability, and Tom was the speaker just before myself, and I was so blown away by his talk. I couldn't help myself and go and say to him at the end of it, "Will you be on my podcast?" And of course he was very generous and accepted my request, and so he's here with us today. Tom is the youngest man, boy, whatever, to I knew I was going to make this mistake, to row across the Pacific in 2022. And I'm going to read his bio to you because it'll explain it much better than I can. So, Tom Robinson is a 26-year-old adventurer and boat builder from Brisbane, Australia. Yes, from Brisbane. In 2022, aged 23, Tom set off from Peru in a boat he designed and built on his most ambitious adventure yet, to become the youngest person ever to row the Pacific Ocean. For the next 14 months, Tom experienced the highs and lows of extreme adventure, facing many challenges along the way. He spent a total of 265 days at sea in complete isolation, as well as many months living in harmony with the inhabitants of remote islands he visited. The journey ended in a dramatic rescue of Vanuatu. Tom survived to tell the tale, break a world record, and share his story with you and all of us today. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's an absolute privilege. I just want to add a couple of more things to his before we start the conversation. He's got a second name which is beautiful. He's actually calls himself Tom Mahuta Robinson, and that's his Tonga River name, which is actually Mahuta Hoho Asanga. He's going to tell us a story about it, by the way, and it translates to the warrior that has paddled from afar. It was given to him by the people of Tonga River upon his landfall after 160 days at sea. And last but not least, Tom has, of course, I said that before, got himself a record in the Guinness Book of World Records. So you're amazing, and I can't wait to get into your story, Tom.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
Yeah, so are you feeling good?
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Wonderful. You've just come from work, isn't it?
Yes, just come from work. It's a good little reprieve to be here in the air conditioning and telling my story once again.
Yes. You're used to it.
Telling the story?
Yes.
Yes, I've done it a fair few times now, so it's it rolls off the tongue pretty easily.
Yeah, and well, when you spent time with me just yesterday, trying to get to know you a bit more, I was like, I'm still in awe, and I think every time I listen to you, I'll get something more out of your story. And
it's a good tale to tell, yeah.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. Let's start by telling us about what exactly, a bit about your childhood. So you grew up in Yeronga, which is not even 10 minutes away from where I live. So that really makes me quite excited.
Yeah.
We've got this epic young man grew up close to us. Tell us about your younger years, your childhood, your siblings, your family, and what exactly had you make that decision to take on this amazing challenge of wanting to row in your own boat, which you made yourself.
Yeah. So
across the Pacific.
So I grew up in Brisbane. I was born in 1999 and spent the first 12 years of my life living in Yeronga. And it was that typical suburban community life, and it was wonderful. The school was just across the road. I had all my friends up and down the street, and we'd play together and we'd build tree houses. And I loved my time in Yeronga. I really did. It was an amazing place, very diverse, and just a wonderful place to grow up and be a kid. At that stage, I hated boats. My dad had a little sailing boat and he'd take me out occasionally, but I hated every minute of it. I didn't like it, didn't want to be a part of it at all. I was obsessed with skateboarding and tree houses. They were my two vices at that point. And then when I was 13, we moved to a house on the river, and from there, everything changed. I gave away the skateboard and the tree houses, and then my dad had a little plywood rowing boat, and so I used to row that to school and back every single day. That was how I got to school, instead of sitting in the traffic with mum in the car. So I'd row my boat to and from school, and every afternoon I'd just play on the river, and I'd go rowing and sailing and fishing, and I just had this most amazing period of my life. I had two sisters growing up. I'm a triplet. Nicola and Chloe are my two sisters. We're all born on the same day. And so home was always chaotic. There was a lot of yelling and fighting and carrying on. And so for me, rowing was my escape. I'd think about the river in Brisbane, and it's this little channel, a corridor really of tranquility and peace that you can't find in the suburbs unless you might go to Tui Forest, let's say. But either side of the river, there's cars and traffic and busyness and houses and all this. And on the river there's this little quiet, tranquil space where I could row and meditate and ponder life. And from that age, from 13 to 17, that was what I did. And that was a foundation of the dream to row across the Pacific Ocean. At that age, I was reading heaps of books about explorers and adventurers and sailors, and I was totally captivated by what they had done and totally inspired. And I thought to myself, I can do something like that too. And after a night of reading and planning and looking at Google Earth on my computer and thinking about a journey I could possibly undertake, I woke up one morning and I looked myself in the mirror and I said, Tom, you're going to row across the Pacific Ocean. You're going to be the youngest person ever to do so, and you're going to build yourself a boat to do it in. And so from that day when I was 14, I was totally committed to the goal of rowing across the Pacific Ocean. And then from every day onwards led to the goal of rowing the Pacific, and there was planning and dreaming and all the rest of it that goes into this trip.
That's an absolutely amazing story. Thank you. You said that you're one of three. You're
Yes.
triplets. Definitely would be in chaos in the house. I can't even imagine that, because having one child is, as a parent, and you obviously first three, your mum didn't have one and then three. She just
it
had
was all in one go.
0 to 3 basically. So yes, chaotic. I can imagine what that would have. I can't imagine, but I can imagine.
Yeah.
And so you said that you liked to be on the river. You said there was a bit of it gave you a bit of solace to be on the river, and there was meditate. You used the word meditate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us a little bit more of something a bit more into that, like.
Yeah, sure. At that stage, I was obviously going to school every day, which didn't suit me at all.
And used to row to school, you said?
Yes, that was how I got to school. I made friends with an old man on the other side of the river that had a pontoon, and so I'd leave my dinghy at his pontoon and walk up the hill to school, and then same in the afternoon. And I guess school didn't suit me particularly, and going home, it was always chaotic. And so the chance to have my own boat and my own freedom was just what I needed, and it was perfect. And so even after rowing to and from school, every afternoon I'd go rowing again for the third time of the day, and I'd row against the tide, so I'd row upstream or downstream against the tide. And then so I got as far as I needed to that day. I'd stop rowing and I'd let the tide take me back home, and I'd watch the sun set, and I'd sit there in complete peace and tranquility. And the only thing that would interrupt that would be a train going over the Indooroopilly Bridge. But other than that, it was just peaceful.
Wow.
And that's what I had every day of my teenage years, and it's what I needed. And I suppose it helped me get through that time, and I was very lucky to have that experience.
Why did you say you didn't fit into school?
I was too busy dreaming about rowing the Pacific.
Yeah.
I think I had other things that felt more important, and so yeah, it didn't seem like a useful, a good use of my time, I suppose.
Yes, why study about stuff when you can go out and experience it?
Yeah, I look back now and I can definitely see the value in it, and there's a lot to be learnt for sure. But at that time, it wasn't for me. Yeah.
Well, our school systems are kind of not, in my opinion at least, not always geared to not geared to encourage people to be creative and think outside the box.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so they're
definitely.
more very cookie cutter.
Yeah, it was quite regimented too, where I went to school, and so I needed an escape from that. Yeah.
So, how was mum and dad with you rowing to school and going up and down the river? And you said you had spent quite a bit of time on the water.
Yeah, they were great in that they let me do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
They're both quite old-fashioned. My dad's very old for a dad, and so they grew up in a different era, and I guess they let us kids grow up in that era to some extent as well. So I had the ability to go out and do what I wanted, and as long as I was home before dinner, then that was acceptable. And so there was this great freedom I was given.
That's amazing. And Dad was a he was also into.
Yeah, he'd been a
boats.
rower and a sailor for much of his life. That was his hobby and his passion too.
And your sisters, did they
No,
like
they
boating?
don't.
None of
My
them
mother
were.
and sisters don't like boats at all. I think they're totally scared of the water. And so, no, it was something that I did and that my dad did. Yeah.
So right from a young age, you've enjoyed being by yourself, and you enjoyed the solitude along the river and the peacefulness. Amidst, on either side, you said there were trains and cars on the roads, but you had your mental calmness that came from rowing by yourself.
Yeah.
As much as you could on the Brisbane River. So then you decided at the age of 14, you looked at yourself in the mirror and you woke up one day. First of all, what made you read books about adventurers and stuff? What did that?
I guess I just picked one up one day and it started to interest me. And then
Was it in the house, or did you go and buy one?
Oh, there would have been a book or two like that in the house, yeah. And then I went out and bought as many as I could and read as many as I could. And totally captivated by an adventurer called Tor Heyerdahl, who in 1947, I believe, maybe 45, he did a famous rafting journey across the Pacific from Lima in Peru across to the Pacific Islands. And so that was a bit of a catalyst for my journey. I wanted to somewhat replicate what he'd done, but instead of sailing on a raft, I wanted to row because I felt that rowing was the ultimate physical challenge. And for me, I wanted to take on the ultimate challenge. I chose the Pacific for a few reasons, but one, it's the biggest ocean. That southern stretch from South America to Australia is the longest stretch possible. And I wanted to visit the islands as well. So I wanted to take on the biggest challenge and in the hardest way possible. And so...
What do you think drove you to want to take on the biggest, hardest challenge?
It's a good question. I didn't figure this out until just recently, but what I've sort of decided is that it was a coming of age sort of a journey for me. And so in our society now, we don't have any sort of coming of age activities for young men. And I grew up in a house with girls, and so there was none of that sort of rough and tumble and that sort of thing that a lot of boys need. And so I think that for me, I wanted to set myself a massive task and to prove to myself that I could do it. I'd read these books about these men and women that had done these amazing things, and I thought to myself, I can do that too. I just need to prove it. And so, and the physical challenge, it does a lot for me. It really uplifts me. It makes me feel really good when I've exerted myself, as it does for everyone. But I just decided to take that to the next level. Yeah.
So it was almost like you created your own, tailor-made your own rites of passage kind of thing into growing into being a man.
I suppose I did, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like in most indigenous cultures, you have this rite of passage for men and women, where, I know when I've got 2 boys and a girl, and when my husband and I separated, I was looking for mentors for my youngest son because he was only 7, my older boy was 18. And I came across lots of these different courses and programs that did a kind of rites of passage for young boys, but then they needed to have a father or an older brother to go with them.
Sure, okay.
You know what I mean? And they break away their bonds from their mothers, not completely, but they're now from 8 years onwards, I think 8 or 14 or something. So there's certainly absolutely a need for that, I think, especially for men and boys to have that experience, that rites of passage, not especially, I should say, both men and women. But so amazing that you just, so it's kind of wired into us, so to speak, that we have to, and you just followed that natural intuition within yourself and took on this challenge for yourself to prove to yourself that,
I think a lot of people
love it.
do that in their own way. They might take up a
Yes.
certain sport or they might go traveling or something, but this is just the
Yes.
way that mine manifested itself. Yeah,
A Western culture rites of passage
yeah,
created by Tom Robinson.
yeah, that's it.
Okay, so tell us. You've reached. We're at 17 years of age. You've done all this research. You've read adventurers' books and stuff. No, you haven't you've done research about people that have crossed, and you've read the books of adventurers that have done some amazing feats. And then at 17, you actually take on your promise to yourself a bit more seriously.
Yeah.
And you start doing prep work. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so part of the journey, it wasn't just about rowing the Pacific, it was about designing and building the boat as well, which sort of makes this journey a bit more unique. I wanted to really have a handle on every single aspect of this journey and know that it was my hard work and effort that went into every step of the process, including the building of the boat, because these sorts of boats, you can't buy them off the shelf, obviously, and so you either get one made by someone, that's what most people do, but I wanted to make it myself. And so I left school and I decided I'd undertake an apprenticeship as a boat builder to learn the skills to build my own boat. So I did a 4-year apprenticeship building boats.
So this is after grade what?
After grade 12.
12, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
so finished high school, and then there was my 4-year apprenticeship as a boat builder, and that gave me all the skills I needed. And then after those 4 years, as soon as my training was up, I left my job and I got out a pencil and a paper and I started to design my boat Maiwa, and then bought some timber. Maiwa.
What's Maiwa?
So Maiwa is the Aboriginal name for the Brisbane River. So she was built on
How
the
do you
banks
spell
of
it?
Maiwar. So that's where I grew up. I learned how to row. That's where the boat was built, on the banks of the river Maiwa. So
In Yeronga.
the boat
built
was
it?
built in Corinda.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's where the name came from. And so once I finished my training, I bought some timber and I drew some plans up and started building the boat. And that's really when the journey began.
And what about your mum and dad? When you told them, what was their reaction when you told them your big adventure dream and that, what you wanted to do?
I think they probably rolled their eyes. At that age, when I was younger, teenager, 14, there was a new dream every week, a new goal, a new idea, right? And so I'm pretty sure they thought this is just another one of Tom's silly ideas and next week he'll be onto something else. But this one stuck. And so I guess eventually over time they would have realised, and not really until I was probably 21, they would have realised that, he's actually taking this seriously and this is going to happen. Yeah.
Wow. And did you talk to Dad much about it? Like get his advice and views and
Yeah,
thoughts?
definitely.
Yeah.
He's spent a bit of time at sea, and so definitely helped to have him around. And yeah, I'd bounce ideas off him and tell him how I was going to do X, Y, Z, and he'd tell me that was wrong, and I'd tell him he was wrong.
I love it.
You know how it is.
If my son or daughter said that they were going to row go in a rowing boat across
Yes.
the Pacific at the age of 17, I'd say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. No, they were very supportive, which is nice.
Well, I don't know what I'd probably not encourage them or discourage them, kind of thing. You know what I mean? But or ask 100 questions to help them mitigate risk. Perhaps I'd be shivering inside. But so you did a fair bit of research.
Yes.
Before you left when you were 23, you said?
Yes.
So what kind of work and what kind of stuff did you research and do to actually get to the point where you were ready to go?
So it's a big journey to plan, really. It's a big undertaking.
Course.
So obviously there's the designing of the boat, and you've got to factor in how much food you need to carry, how many supplies you need. All these things go into that design. You've got to build the boat, and there's a whole 101 things that go into that, 1,001 really. Then there's planning the journey. Where am I going to leave from? How am I going to get the boat there? How am I going to get through customs? When I get out to sea, which way are the currents going to push me? Which islands can I stop at? Where am I going to resupply? How many spare oars am I going to need to take? What happens if this goes wrong? What happens if that goes wrong? What are the contingency plans? Who do I need to contact? What's the communication going to be? What sort of GPS do I need? What sort of, AIS do I need?
What's AIS?
AIS is the transponder that sends out a message to the other ships in the area, so I show up on their screen, so I'm safe and can be seen. What sort of food am I going to take? How am I going to stop myself from getting sick or sunburnt or anything in between? What sort of fish can I catch and eat? Like there's so many different things that go into it. Like how am I going to go through customs when I get to these islands? It was... There's a hell of a lot that goes into it. It's a big project. And so, all those years up to 21 when I started planning the journey full time and properly working on the boat, there was a lot of research, a lot of contacting other people who had done similar trips and finding out what went wrong and what went well and all these sorts of things. So, a lot goes into it, yeah.
Wow. It's like a thesis.
Yeah,
like writing your own
yes.
That's like you had to go down to the detail. I mean, what about like finding out what fish you'd catch over there and
all this sort of thing.
And then the currents and
and what sort of winds you're going to encounter and where the fishing boat fleets are and all these sorts of things.
Because you did an apprenticeship, you said, in boat building.
Yes.
Now you've got to work out how you're going to navigate 7,000 miles.
Yes, I had to learn how to navigate
without anyone.
Yes.
In a boat without a sail or a motor.
Yes, exactly.
Just rowing.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to grapple with that.
There's a lot. It's a lot of time to get through all that. Yeah. And then the hardest thing by far is trying to ship the boat to Peru and trying to get it through customs.
How big was your boat?
The boat, Maiwa, is 7 meters long and 2 meters wide. So if you want to visualize it, in the middle there's a little cockpit that's where I'd row all day. In the back of the boat, in the stern, there's just full of food and water and storage. And then in the front of the boat, the bow, there's a little tiny cabin. Just imagine a one-man tent, but it's fully sealed. And there's enough room that I can climb in there and I can lay down at night and sleep and I can do a little bit of cooking and that sort of thing.
And how did you have to get sponsors to sponsor you? Did you enroll other people in this whole project of yours?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's not a cheap endeavour rowing across the Pacific, especially when you're just a kid. And so, I had to get sponsors to help pay for the materials to build the boat and to help pay to ship it over there. And then all these sorts of things, on it goes. And so I was very lucky to have a few really good sponsors and then really a lot of generous, kind individuals. I set up a GoFundMe. And so people just donated because they'd heard about the journey. They wanted to support me. So really the bulk of the support, and I'll be forever grateful, is from generous individuals who would give me money so I could get to the start line, and then throughout the journey they would give me some more money to help me pay for food and all this sort of stuff along the way. And so very kind of these people.
What kind of food did you have to... Like you've got to think about food that's going to last for like a year.
Dehydrated food, yeah. And so I was luckily enough to be sponsored by Backcountry Cuisine, which make dehydrated meals. And so they sent to the home in Brisbane 250 packets of dehydrated meals. I figured that'd be enough for one every night. And then for the other meals, I had oats for breakfast and I had tortillas with peanut butter for lunch. There was this big debacle about...
Same thing every day?
Oh, I loved it. Every single day it was the same thing and I loved it. It was really good. Yeah, it was really nice. And this big debacle trying to get all the food over to South America because you can't buy that sort of food over there. Not the dehydrated food. But I wasn't allowed to put it in the shipping container because then there's some law against importing food unless you've got licenses to do so. So it was all very complex. So I ended up leaving Brisbane Airport with 6 large suitcases just full of dehydrated food. And I made it all the way to Peru with these 6 giant suitcases.
So while you were doing all this planning, Tom, did you ever think... Like I'm just trying to think myself over here, like getting on, like imagining yourself in the deep, dark ocean at nighttime, being alone. I mean, you've never done this before. Like, have you been on the Brisbane River alone at nighttime?
Yes, I'd done a little bit of nighttime rowing and sailing, so there was a bit of that. I envisaged all those different scenarios, the worst possible scenarios, the best possible scenarios. All those things went through my head probably daily, really, for the 7 years leading up to it. So you were kind of
playing it through your mind, I suppose, and getting used to that. Would have been part of a prep thing as well.
Absolutely.
Without realizing it, possibly, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. Okay, so what about your sisters? What were their reaction to your wanting to do this great adventure?
That, of course, they were very supportive. But I think they thought it was quite silly. I'm pretty sure they thought I was going to die. I almost did, so they were not wrong quite. But no, they're very supportive. But I do. They probably still think it was silly.
And did you have were you with somebody? Did you have a girlfriend at the time? Or?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest parts of the journey. Is I was with this amazing girl, fantastic, amazing woman. But unfortunately, I had to end that before I left on the journey, because I knew that I could only be truly happy out there if I was as disconnected as I possibly could be with home life and with the outside world. And I knew that I'd always have friends and family here, but that's something you can give space to when you need to. But if you're in a relationship, then that's very difficult, because I knew that I'd be out there and I'd be thinking about her instead of thinking about the now out there and being in the moment. And so, yeah, that's one of the hard parts of doing these sorts of things, is you've got to let those other things go. But that's the only way really to truly have the experience out there that I was chasing and aiming for. And so
you had to have this one focus mind kind of thing when you're going there. So
absolutely.
no other distractions.
Yeah.
And especially not an emotional connection, as you're saying, to your girlfriend.
Yeah, I wanted to be out there and know that there was no one waiting for me when I got back, theoretically.
Yeah.
That to me was true freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and in a way a responsible thing to do as well.
Yes.
Both to yourself and to the
Yes.
girlfriend, although I'm sure she would have been pretty heartbroken.
Yeah. I think, other people have done this sort of journey later in life when they've got kids and they've got family. And to me, that adds a whole nother level of stress and anxiety that takes away from the purity of the solitude. And so I wanted to make that solitude as pure as possible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel disconnected at all in that leading up to that point?
What do you mean by disconnected?
Like, because you're not, I'm not going to say not normal, but you're not
Sure.
There's very few of us that will wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to row across the Pacific 7,000 miles,
Yes.
And so you're certainly different. Like we're all different.
Yes.
And I'm not, it's not a bad thing that, but you're certainly one of, in many that would wake up, and there are not many adventurers in the world.
Yeah.
So did you feel disconnected from people through that journey because you're aspiring to do something so way out there, and not everybody sees that in the same light as you see it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Yeah, I think I have these very vivid memories when I was a teenager of when things were tough, or when whatever was going on in my life that wasn't working. There was always this vision that it's okay, Tom, one day you'll be out in the middle of the Pacific and you won't have to worry about all this other stuff, about trying to make friends, or about trying to fit in, or about none of that stuff matters, because one day you're going to be rowing across the Pacific, and that's what really matters. So it was always this little escape for me. It's like, that's going to happen in a few years, in 5-10 years time. And so don't worry about the now, because that's going to happen.
So solitude and your aloneness is very important for you, Tom.
Yeah,
absolutely. You feel connected in that.
Yes.
Like I remember you saying to me yesterday, tell me why solitude is important for you.
I think we all have a lot going on in our brains, and living in the city, there's so much to stimulate what's going on and so much to crowd what's going on, that it doesn't leave any time to meditate and to work through thoughts and to figure things out. And so the time alone is really time just to work through all those things and to ponder life and to try and find some meaning and answer some questions. And when you've got so many other distractions going on, it's almost impossible to come to any conclusions and to find any answers, because there's too many things going on. And so, being alone is just absolutely peaceful. And there's still thoughts rolling around, of course, but it's time to work through those thoughts. That's really valuable.
That's amazing insight for a young man. So even not now, but even when you were much younger.
Yeah.
So let's get to the part where you've done all your prep. You've decided that you were going to start your journey from Peru.
Yes.
And your mom and dad come to the airport. Yes, obviously, to see you off. What was that like? And tell us from there to arriving in Peru and what happened till you actually left Peru
Yes.
to embark on your journey on
Yeah.
the waters.
So sometimes people ask me if my parents came to Peru.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah,
as well,
yeah, okay. So, but I told them, no, you're not allowed to come to Peru. The journey begins when I leave Brisbane Airport. And so from then on, it's a solo journey and I'll figure it out on my own. And so my two sisters and my mum and dad, we went to the airport and
Brisbane Airport.
Airport, and we said our goodbyes, and mum shed a tear and I shook dad's hand, and that was it. I walked through the departure gates and I didn't see them again for 17 months or something like that.
My goodness.
Yeah, and at that point I was pretty stressed about making it to Peru with all my luggage and all the things I needed, and there was still a big mountain to climb before I was rowing away from the coastline. There was still a lot to get through and so many unknowns. So I don't think it left much time to comprehend the fact that I was saying goodbye, because there were so many things to think about and get through and work through and so many unknowns before I could even begin, that the goodbye was obviously difficult, definitely difficult, but enough things to keep me busy that I didn't ponder on it too much. Yeah.
And so then you arrive in Peru, and
Yes.
What happens then?
Well, then I expected that my boat would come out of customs within the next week or two, and I'd get my supplies and I'd be on my way in a few weeks' time. But everything happens at a different pace there, and the bureaucracy is quite intense, and I'm trying to import a boat into Peru. I don't know the language. I don't know the laws about it. It's all very difficult. And so it was another month until I saw my boat, and they held it for ransom for an extra $20,000. You won't see your boat until
As
you
in
give
they
us
wanted
this.
a bribe?
Yeah. And so that I just had to that thankfully I had that money there just, and so I just had to,
So
bite
you
my
had to pay
tongue
them
and-
$20,000 to get your boat out?
just so I'd see my boat. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it took a month just of meetings and rigmarole and paperwork and all these things just to get the boat. Just so that first month was great fun, because I had a month of limited responsibilities, and so I was able to be a tourist a little bit. And then once the boat came out, there was a month of getting all my paperwork in order so I could leave the country legally. A lot of customs stuff, a lot of meetings with naval officers, and a lot of things that were all happening in Spanish, and so I didn't quite understand.
How did you navigate that? If it was having-
I was very lucky. There was this man, Gonzalo Rivago, who's a member of the yacht club in Peru, and somehow I made contact with the yacht club before I left.
Before you left Brisbane?
Before I left Brisbane, and he said to me, "Tom, whatever you need, I'm here to help." And if it wasn't for him, I don't know how I would have started, because he did so much for me. When I arrived to Peru, his son was there to pick me up from the airport. They found accommodation for me at the rowing club.
That's amazing.
They just did so much for me, and if it wasn't for him, things would have been very, very difficult. And so this is a solo journey, but there are people along the way that have a huge impact on my journey and on myself. And so every step along the way, there was someone there to really help me out, and he was one of them. Yeah.
So he helped you get through all the navigation of all the paperwork and getting your boat out, and
Yes.
probably being your interpreter kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you said, tell me about leaving the harbour in Peru. So you finally got your boat,
Yes.
and you've got all your paperwork in order. You've been endorsed, passport is stamped for leaving the country,
Yes.
and you're in the boat,
Yes.
and you're ready for.
Yeah, it was
taking
amazing. It was amazing. The day of my departure, I woke up and there was this great gravity about the situation and the day. And I packed my final things into the boat. Yes, passport was stamped. There was a big eruption of cheering, and there was cameras clicking. There was a bit of a crowd of people around.
So this is at the harbour, at the port.
This is at the yacht club. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then there was a few people sort of hanging around, and where I left from in Lima, in Callao, La Punta, it's a nice little village almost, just separate from the city, and it's where the port is and where the yacht clubs and rowing clubs are, and it's this own little community. And I'd been hanging out in that community for 2 months, being the only gringo basically there. And so everyone sort of saw me walking around and knew that there was this guy here about to do this thing. And so the day of my departure came and all these boats turned up. There was naval patrol vessels and there was rowing boats from the rowing clubs. All the school kids were out rowing. There was yachts from the yacht club. And there was even a Peruvian naval brass band in a launch.
Did you know all this was going to happen?
No, I had no idea. I saw this brass band arrive and I assumed there must be some event on at the yacht club afterwards. And then I looked at the yacht club manager and he gave me a knowing smile and a wink and he pointed at me, "This is for you, Tom." It was so amazing. And so they had this brass band playing these traditional Peruvian songs as I began to row, and I sat in my seat and I pulled on the oars and I pulled and pulled and pulled, and these boats all followed me. And then one by one, as the hours went by, the boats dropped off until there was just one boat left, which was Gonzalo's boat. And then eventually he had to turn around, so he gave me a wave goodbye, and then that was it. I was on my own, and I wouldn't see another person for a long, long time after that.
Oh my gosh, what a grand send-off.
Yes.
So they were like your community that you had created in that one. So,
Yes.
I always think nothing happens for no reason, So the delay of your boat
Yeah.
taking 1 month or 2 months or whatever, 1 month to come and then another month to get your papers in order. You had a couple of months in Peru. And that's the time when you got to know locals, spent more time with, what's his name? Gonzalo or whatever.
Yeah.
And not whatever, but Gonzalo. And
Yeah.
developed those connections with people, and you got them enrolled in your project that they were willing to come and be there for you to send you off in this amazing, and you're far away from home.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And yet you had this sense of connection that you've created in the couple of months that gave you this grand send-off. So so that's fabulous, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Because first of all, it would be just scary to be in another country and to embark on a big thing. And so here you've created your community. It wasn't in the plan, I would imagine.
Absolutely not. Yeah. But these things happen.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So you're in the boat, and you said they followed you quite far out.
Yeah, probably a couple of miles. Yeah, different boats followed me. Yeah.
To make sure that you're out safe or something.
Yeah.
What was your first, say, 5 hours or 10 hours after they dropped off? And now you're alone on the waters.
Yeah, there was no chance to appreciate the scenario because I was totally focused on the first 48 hours. I was leaving
Why
from...
is that? What?
Well, I was leaving from one of the busiest shipping ports on the west coast of South America. And so one of the biggest dangers for me at sea is being hit by a container ship, right, or a fishing boat, because my boat's so small, and so it'd be very easy to hit in the night.
Yeah.
Despite the fact I had lights and navigation equipment, these things happen. And so the first 48 hours for me were the most important of that first part of the journey. And so I knew I had to get through them safely. And so there wasn't really time to embrace the situation and take stock of what had been. It was really just, it was determination and focus on those first 2 days to make sure I got away from the coast safely and then into the ocean and where it's relatively safe. So
your focus was on being safe, basically.
Yeah.
And then, so this is day 3 now.
Yes.
So day 3, now you're starting to, you're out on the waters, in the dark waters. Give us a bit more about that and what happens next.
Yeah, the first few days were pretty interesting. It was cold and it was wet and it was rough. So I was sort of thrown in the deep end there, so to speak. When you imagine the Pacific, well, I imagine it to be pretty idyllic and beautiful sunsets and all the rest.
It was quite the opposite of what you had in mind.
Yeah, I was wearing jumpers. I was cold and there was a good breeze blowing, and so it was rough, and the boat was very heavily laden with all the food.
Did you get scared at that point when you're just starting out and you have this unexpected, not so good weather?
I don't know if I was scared. It really kind of brought home the severity of the whole situation. I went, okay, this is real.
Reality hits.
Yeah, this is serious. Which I knew was going to happen. But and then probably day 3 or 4, there was this amazing flourishing, this realization that after so many years of dreaming, it had become a reality, and that I was the master of my own ship, and that I was the only person that was going to get me out of this situation alive, and I was totally and wholly responsible for my own life and safety and success of the journey. And that just brought about this great happiness within me, that it was up to me. And after all these years of telling people I was going to do it, here I am and I'm doing it. It was amazing.
And even just getting to that point is a huge accomplishment.
Yes, yeah,
Just
yeah.
having
That's
done
half
the
the
research,
journey.
built the boat, got yourself to Peru, got yourself out of the harbour, and you're on the waters.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Big effort to get there. Yeah, yeah.
So then you said you were non-stop rowing. Was it difficult, like as in those currents and
At
stuff
times
like
it was
that?
very difficult. Yeah, yeah. I left
I mean, you got to be
Peru.
strong to row that. I mean, it's a big boat.
Big
it's not
heavy
a small boat. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So physically it's demanding. Yeah, I'm rowing for 8 to 10 hours every day. And
8
then,
to 10 hours.
yeah, on the oars. Yeah, it's like doing a big hike. Yeah, and then I get a bit of sleep at night, and then I've got to navigate and cook and write my log and do all these other things. And so, yeah, it's pretty full on. Yeah.
So you're pretty busy on your boat.
Yes.
There's
yeah.
always something. Well, you have to have your wits around about you all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, there was-
You're on high alert all the time, kind of thing.
There wasn't really time for doing nothing. No, I was
Yeah,
always doing
yeah.
something. Yeah.
You said that somewhere around day 49, something happened. Tell us what was that?
The first 49 days were good. Things got better and better, and I was having more and more fun. And I'd see the odd ship in the distance, the odd container ship, and that was sort of interesting. And occasionally I'd call them up on the radio and try and make contact. But on day 49, I saw this fishing boat in the distance, and it piqued my interest a bit because it turned around and got a bit closer and closer. This is very interesting. And then I saw them through my binoculars. They dropped a small dinghy alongside the boat, and these two men jumped in the boat and they came over to me. And this is when I became very fearful, because I thought these people could be pirates. They could come, or just opportunistic pirates. They could come and strip me of everything I've got on the boat, and I'd be left pretty helpless. They came over and they sort of looked at me funny, and I looked at them funny, and I was very scared then. And then one of them smiled at me, and then I smiled back at him, and we both started laughing. And I tried to explain through broken Spanish that I was safe and happy and healthy and I didn't need anything. But they wanted to help me. It was just in their nature that they wanted to help me. They looked, I looked vulnerable out there, which I was. And so I rubbed my belly like this to say I was hungry. They went back to the ship, and I saw them loading all these supplies into this dinghy, including 2 massive tuna. And then they came back to the boat and unloaded all these things, and we shook hands, and it was all very cheery and nice. And then they went back to the mothership, and they pulled the dinghy up, and she gave 3 toots of the horn. She steamed away over the horizon. Within half an hour, it was all over. It was such a strange experience. I'd had no human contact for 49 days. All of a sudden, these 2 Ecuadorian fishermen appear in this dinghy and say hello to me, and then they're off again, just like that.
That's so special.
It was so surreal,
Yeah,
and I just
yeah.
sat in the cockpit and I couldn't help but laugh. I was just laughing and laughing.
But it would have kind of so you're 49 days out in the wilderness on the
Yes.
ocean, deep blue oceans.
Yes.
And then suddenly you're disconnected from people. And then suddenly you got your bit of connection there with these 2 beautiful humans that drop you food.
Yeah,
And it kind
yeah.
of would, for me, it's almost like you get filled up again with some connection with humanity.
It was
But
close. It was
Yeah.
close, but we couldn't have a conversation. And so there was this little niggling. I'd love to tell them some stories. I'd love to
Yes.
tell them what I'm doing and how it's all working. But
yes.
so there was this so close but not quite kind of feeling
Yes.
about it. But yeah, it was amazing.
But
It was-
just another form, like a human form that
Yeah,
you can see.
yeah,
But also
exactly.
I suppose you had that. I mean, you don't have to always speak to connect. You know what I mean? They've
Yes.
connected with
Oh,
you
exactly.
through the exchange of
Just
food
a handshake's enough.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and probably giving you a hug, I'm sure, or
Yeah,
whatever.
we weren't that
handshake.
close, no.
Okay,
they might have been a bit freaked out.
that's the feminine aspect talking. Okay, so that's so sweet. That's absolutely. I mean, it
Yeah.
would have kind of given you a bit more encouragement to keep going, kind of thing. You know,
Absolutely,
it would be,
yeah, very uplifting.
a
Yeah,
random encounter.
yeah.
And then the real fun starts, from what I remember you telling me.
Yes.
Day 75 was where you realized something pretty serious, and you're going to tell us about that.
Definitely, yeah. I think I'll just start by explaining a little bit about this journey and the fact that whenever and everyone knows this, but whenever you're undertaking a big journey, it's so important to have a concept of what the finish line looks like. It just makes every day easier because you've got this visual of where you're going to get to next. So for me, leaving Peru, still I was setting out into the unknown, still not sure, but I had this idea and this hope that I would get to this island group called the Marquesas Island Group in French Polynesia. That's the first sort of island group you get to crossing the South Pacific near the equator there. So I was trying to head along the equator and then head down to the Marquesas. For the first 75 days, things were going great. I was on track. I was loving every minute. Every day just got better and better, and I couldn't believe how much I was enjoying the solitude, the time alone, the rowing, the whole lifestyle was just getting better and better every day. And I was on track to reach these islands, and then in about 100 days, so I was doing well, about 4,000 miles to the first stop, so things were looking good. And then about day 75, this strong southerly breeze came up and started blowing me off course. And the whole first leg of the journey, I've been trying to get south towards these islands, but I can produce about 1 horsepower. I'm just a guy in a boat, and the waves and the currents and the winds can do with me what they wish. And so very quickly I was blown off course and then into a new current stream and away from these islands. And I woke up one morning and realized just like that there was no hope of reaching these islands whatsoever. That was totally gone. And then I this sinking feeling set in, and it was like, well, I've got enough food for maybe 150 days. I was thinking I was going to get to an island in 100 days, and cyclone season is approaching, so I need to find landfall and find safety soon. But I need to find another island. And so I got out my big chart of the Pacific Ocean, and I looked around the Marquesas to see if there was any islands close by. I kept going west, no islands. 1,000 miles further west is a little tiny spot called Penrhyn, or Tongaleva is the other name they use for it. And I went to my pilot books, which is like a bit of an encyclopedia for the islands in that area in the Pacific. And there was just one little tiny paragraph, and it said, Penrhyn Atoll, Cook Islands, inhabited 2 villages. And that was all I needed. I needed to know that I could get there and I could resupply and there would be people there. That's what I needed to know. So all of a sudden, the whole journey changed. And instead of aiming for this vast island group with amenities and airports and all this sort of thing, I was aiming for a little tiny speck that had 2 villages. And other than that, I had almost no knowledge of what to expect there. And so on day 75, I made a phone call for the first time. I used the satellite phone and I called my mum and dad at home. And
so you haven't spoken to them for 75 days?
Yeah.
Tell me, in between, was there any way of communicating back home or to anyone that you were safe, on track, all of that?
Yeah, I had a tracker on the boat that would automatically upload to my website. So there were lots of people around the world following the journey through the website. And so every 12 hours, a little yellow dot would appear on the screen.
Yeah.
And then I would occasionally send the parents a text message and just say, all okay, I'm alive. Yeah. But I wanted to maintain that lack of contact for as long as possible.
Yes.
And I lasted 75 days. And then I picked up the phone and Dad answers, oh, hi, Tom, how are you? Nice to hear from you. I said, oh, it's good to hear from you too, Dad. He goes, what's going on? I said, oh, well, a bit serious now because I'm not going to make these Marquesas. No matter how hard I try, I'm being pushed the wrong way.
So Dad obviously knew the whole path of what you were going to do.
Yes, he knew where I was aiming for, where I was trying to get to. And he said, oh, well, that's no good, but you better just keep rowing and see how you go. I said, okay, well, there's nothing else I can do. But I asked him if he could try and make contact with the people of Penrhyn and see if they could maybe come out and meet me in a boat as I approached the island, because I had no knowledge of this island except just before I left Peru, an old sailor gave me this book, and in the book was a little tiny sketch of Penrhyn and a little blurb about it.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, amazing, just amazing. And this little blurb said that the entrance into the lagoon, the passages, the currents rips through there, it's very dangerous. So I knew that approaching this island, there was a very high risk of shipwreck, of being washed up on this island or being wrecked on the coral reef. So I asked Dad if he could organise for a boat to come out and tow me in. He said he'd try and do that.
So he had to contact somebody on Penrhyn Island.
Yeah, correct. And say, I've got this son in a rowing boat that's approaching your island.
How did he do that?
I think he went online and he found that there was like a government officer or something stationed on that island. a local guy, and that it obviously had an email or a phone number for that person. And so he was able to make contact, and he would have just told them, I've got this son who's 75 days at sea, and he's trying to get to Penrhyn. We don't know how long it's going to take, but we'll let you know when he gets a bit closer, sort of thing. Yeah, it's amazing.
So day 75, when you realize that you're absolutely not going to make it to the Marquesas, did I say that right? And you've kind of had to rethink your plan.
Yes.
You make a call to Dad, and you work out, well, before you call your dad, you've worked out that you're going to drop in at the Penrhyn Islands because you've had this conversation with somebody else in Peru who gave you this book.
Yes, about the island. Yeah, well, just a little blurb about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
that was
it's
just
funny how it's like it's kind of was meant to be kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's amazing.
But when you were on day 75 or the days following that, did you know how much more you'd have to row to get to Penrhyn?
Yeah, no. I had a rough idea based on the average miles a day I was covering and how many miles it was further, but I didn't know if the currents and the winds would maintain their intensity or differ. And so I had food packed for 150 days. I'd been catching a lot of fish as well and water for that time. And I had to start rationing a bit and get pretty serious about making sure that I had enough supplies that I was going to make it there, and I made it there in 160. So I just got
Tom,
through.
you're absolutely. I mean, I still every time I hear you, I get even more
It's a good
blown
tale.
away.
Yeah, it's a nice story.
Yeah, but it seems like you're quite comfortable with being in the unknown, because you know what I mean.
Yes.
You went out into this journey. There was, even though you did all the research you possibly could.
Yes.
There was also lots of things that you didn't quite anticipate would have happened.
That's what makes it an adventure.
Yes,
it's the unknown.
of course. And I think maybe that type of person who's an adventurer has to be comfortable with the unknown.
Yes, at some point you've got to surrender and realize that no matter what you do, there's probably a greater plan out there for you, and that.
Beautiful. Did you at any time you've discovered that you're going to, you've got a plan to go to Penrhyn, and then you've got some surety, okay, now I'm going to go there. But so you still didn't have an idea of how long it was going to be or how you were going to get there or what hurdles might be in the way there to get there.
Yeah, no, there was still so many unknowns, yeah.
Yeah. Did you, my question I was going to ask you, it's gone.
Okay, that's all right.
In all your time of not knowing what was going to happen, did you ever feel an experience of being completely free of any kind of responsibilities?
Yeah, I think so. I think after day 75, things got very difficult, physically and mentally challenging, because I needed to make sure I was getting on track to this island of Penrhyn. So there was a long period there of torture, basically, of pure pain and suffering. Up until then, I'd row 8 or 10 hours, but then I would sleep and navigate and catch a fish and write my log, my diary. There was time for other things, but when things got really serious, there was no time for anything else. It was just rowing and sleeping and eating, and it was
survival.
Yeah, pain and suffering basically. And so there was this great hardship during that journey. And after that, probably about a day 130, I had this most amazing experience, the likes of which I don't think I'll ever have again. But I think from that solitude and from that hardship and adversity came this inner feeling of nirvana is the only word I can use to describe it. This inner feeling came about me, and it stayed with me for 3 or 4 days. And it was a feeling that it's very hard to describe. But I totally surrendered to the situation. I was totally at peace with myself, my position in the world, and the decisions I'd made to get to where I was at that time. But I just felt this warm inner glow within me radiating out around into the world around me. And there was nothing else. It was just blue sky and blue water. But I felt this within me and just felt totally at peace. And I'd look back at every little bit of my life and thought about so many things. And from that came this sort of nirvana experience. And
you're giving me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because it's just as you're speaking, it's almost like as if you touched You just touched divinity in a way, you know what I mean?
It was something very special there. Yeah.
But you had to give up all your thoughts of what would happen kind of thing. 'cause
Exactly.
You were
Yeah.
like you were in a state of surrender.
Yeah,
almost.
yeah. I think I liken it to, you know, when you go to a nursing home and you meet some of the old people there, and you can tell that they're totally at peace. They know they've only got so much time left, but they're totally at peace. And so I got to this stage of being totally at peace and totally happy with whatever the outcome was. I thought to myself, if I died tomorrow, which could happen, you never
Yes.
know, that it had been a life well lived, and that I'd done the right things, and I'd made the right decision to get to where I was.
Wow.
And so from that came this real inner warmth and glow, and it was very,
Yes.
very special. And I'm sure there are, you know, lots of other people have experienced it in different ways, but that's sort of just how I got to that experience out there alone. Yeah, not something I ever aimed for or expected. It's just a byproduct of the solitude and the suffering, I think.
That's just so beautiful. I mean, I was sharing with you the other day. I kind of I don't know if it was exactly the same kind of experience, but there was a point in my life when I felt like I had tried everything I could to remedy a situation in my own personal journey, and I couldn't. And I was so like I'd reached rock bottom, and so I decided I was going to just. I just screamed out, I give up, I surrender, take me and do whatever you want. Like I screamed loudly. There was nobody at home, and hopefully nobody else heard me. But I remember then just sobbing my eyes out for about a good half an hour. And then I went for a walk down along the river. And I remember feeling like as if something was just, I was being carried, like a lightness.
Wow.
Which kind of likens to your feeling of that glow kind of thing. And that's what reminded me of that. But I think for the next few days after that, even when I went back home, and even though the circumstances in my home hadn't changed, there was still lots of not so good stuff happening. I still felt supported.
Wow.
I still felt a sense of peace and calm inside of me.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I was not.
absolutely.
I was removed from it, but I was in it, but removed from it. If that makes sense. And that's never left me. It hasn't left me.
Yeah.
Ever.
Wow. Yeah.
So things happen in my life, but I always have that sense of calm deep inside me.
Yep.
So that's the only thing I can relate to is how I can kind of relate to your experience, which is
absolutely.
just beautiful.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
It's a pleasure. Yeah.
It would have been probably one of the most special things of your whole journey.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Not yet, because
No,
we've got to get to the
lots more.
island of Penrhyn. Okay, so you're close to the island of Penrhyn. Tell us
Yes.
what happens then. Your day 170?
160.
160.
Yeah, so 160 days at sea, 5 months, and I find myself approaching this little island, and it's just a low coral atoll, so the land is no more than 2 meters above sea level, and then the only thing that grows on here is coconut palms. So it's very small little tiny dot, and I was within 5 miles, and I could only just see this faint grey smudge on the horizon. And every story, every tale, every movie, every book you've ever seen, read or heard about a shipwrecked sailor or an explorer discovering new land or seeing land, it was just that exact same feeling. And I cried out salvation, because I knew that I was saved and that I was going to get to this island, and I was going to be okay.
Wow.
And there was just this elation of reaching my goal. And although I was only halfway across the Pacific, it was this amazing feeling. And I kept on rowing, and this...
You were lost and now you're found.
Yeah, that's it. What made you say that?
I don't know. It just came to me. You were lost on the seas and now you're found. You found land. Kind of thing.
That's a little line that runs through my head every day.
Really?
So it's funny you said that. That little grey smudge turned into a green smudge, and I kept rowing, and it was baking hot, and I was sort of almost delirious at this point, and got closer and closer, and I could see this white sandy beach, these big breaking waves, and these green coconut palms, and it was just like the perfect image of paradise that you could ever come up with. And but at this time I was still nervous, because there was still no safety to be had yet, because I needed to get into the lagoon in the middle of this island and get safe, because up until then there's just big breaking waves on coral reefs, and in a small boat like mine, very easy to be overcome by currents and waves, and I could be wrecked. And so I'd heard that a boat was going to come out and tow me in, and so I was looking and looking and looking and couldn't see anything. And then eventually I saw this little dot, and it came closer and closer, and it was this sort of aluminium workboaty kind of thing, this big open boat, and it was full of these big brown, jolly, smiling people. And I cried out hello, and they said, "Hello, Tom." And
they were expecting you.
Yeah, I threw them a tow line, and they tied it off to the stern of their boat, and they towed me in through this eastern passage and into the lagoon. And I looked down, and for so long I'd seen this deep, dark, rich blue, and all of a sudden it became this turquoise, and then this light blue, and then I looked down and I could see the bottom, see the sandy bottom, and either side of me are these big breaking waves, and I'm towed in through, and it was just this most magical feeling. The sun was shining and everyone was smiling, and I'd made it to safety.
Wow.
But at this point I still didn't know what to expect. I'd been for the past whatever it was, 160 days I've been rowing towards an island, but I had no idea what was going to be there. Was it going to be full of resorts and tourists and lots of other yachts, and was there going to be all this activity, or was there going to be nothing at all? It was, and I knew then that I had to stay there for 4 months during the cyclone season. The other people there didn't know that this guy was going to stay for 4 months, but I knew I had to stay, and so I was quite nervous that I'm just hopeful that they were going to be supportive. And we came in, and there was a few people in little fishing boats, and they waved as we came in, and I had sort of a good feeling about this island, and tied off to the wharf, and a fellow jumped aboard, and he stamped my passport, and he said, "Tom, you can step ashore now." I looked at my feet, and I looked at the boat, and then the little gap, and then the coral wharf, and I hadn't taken a real step in 5 months because there's no room to walk about on my boat. And so I took a deep breath, and I made this jump, and I felt my feet land on this hard coral ground, and the warmth of it, I can feel it. And I stood up, and I was sort of dizzy and dazed, and I couldn't stand up straight because I had
to that sway on the water.
The constant rock. Yeah, I hadn't felt that firm ground for so long. And luckily there were all these people around me to hold me up and shake my hand, and it was this just this massive feeling of relief to know that finally I was safe, and I didn't have to worry about the weather the next day or the currents or how many miles I was going to make. None of that mattered because I was safe and I could relax. And
you'd have a proper bed to sleep in.
Yes.
A simple luxury that we take for granted every single night.
Running water whenever I wanted it, not rationing water, just amazing things like that. And this man from the village, he came up to me as people were taking photos, and he shook my hand and he said, "Tom, welcome to the island of Penrhyn. It's very nice to have you here, but there's something I must inform you of." I said, "Okay, what's that?" And he said, "Well, you came here as Tom Robinson, but you are now Mahuta Hoi Hoi Asanga, which in our language means the warrior that has paddled from afar. So welcome to Penrhyn, Mahuta."
What a wonderful welcome.
And it just almost knocked me over. I couldn't believe it, that these people had known me for all of half an hour, and they decided to bestow me with this name. And I was totally captivated. I'd read in old books as a kid about early adventurers going to islands and being given Polynesian names, and I thought that this tradition didn't exist anymore. And I don't think it does many other places, but this little island I went to. And they gave me that name, Mahuta Hoi Hoi Asanga.
So they made you one of them pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
And in an honourable way.
Yes, absolutely. And so for the next 4 months I was Mahuta.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very special.
That is such a special story, and such an, like goosebump kind of story, the whole discovering the island and being pulled in, and that feeling of elation as you described it when you first saw that smudge on the horizon, and knowing that I'm going to be safe, I'm going to live, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you were there in Penrhyn, you said, for 4 months.
Yeah.
And that was to escape the
cyclone
season.
Yeah.
What was it like on the island? What was life on the island like?
Fascinating. Absolutely amazing.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, the 4 months there was the greatest part of the journey. That was without a doubt the most impactful part of the journey. For the past 20 years of my life, I'd grown up in the West, in the city, hustle and bustle and individualism and money and all these sorts of things. And all of a sudden, I'm sort of just placed in this little tiny oasis and this spot where they don't think in the way that I was brought up to think. And what motivates them is totally different to what we think about in the West here. And so it was a really amazing learning curve and just this gradual realization that there's another way we can do things and another way to live lives where the self isn't number one. There's more important things. And then that's where, well, what I observed anywhere is that's where community comes from, and that's where faith comes from, and that's where true meaning in life comes from, is all these other things. And when you put yourself a few rungs down from what's really important, not at the top, then this sort of magic happens. And so for 4 months I just experienced this, and there wasn't a single day where I didn't just shake my head and go, these people have got it right.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you've experienced nirvana on the boat.
Yes.
You've touched divinity there.
Yes.
Then you arrive at this island and
Yes.
you're immersed in it amongst
Yes.
all these beautiful people,
Yeah.
experiencing community as in the true sense of the word, to be one off, to be part of, but not
Yes.
separate. You
Yes.
know? You
Yep.
felt part of a whole group of people that took you in as their own,
Yeah.
made you their own, accepted you, and all the rest of it. That's absolutely beautiful. What does it look like in like day-to-day living? What is a day in the life of the people? What are they called? People of Penrhyn.
They're Cook Islanders. They're part of the
Cook
country
Islanders.
of the Cook
What's
Islands.
a day look like over there on the island? Like for yourself?
Yeah. So it's a very small atoll. There's not much land. There's a little bit of land circling the lagoon. About 200 people live there in total in 2 separate villages opposite each other. They get a supply ship every 3 or 4 months, and chartered flights come in maybe once every month or 2. And there's no shop on the island. They have to bring in all their supplies every 4 months. They live off coconuts and fish and the rice they bring in. And so they live very, very devout but peaceful lives. And so church was a massive part of life on Penrhyn. They go to church 5 times a week. So during the week there'd be 2 services.
What kind of church?
It's the Cook Islands Christian Church, and so it's the London Missionary Society came to Penrhyn in the 1860s, which is quite late. So they had no contact with the outside world until the 1860s, basically. Then the London Missionary Society came and built a church there, and that changed their lives forever.
What does that service look like? You used to attend it? Did you attend it?
No. I hadn't been a churchgoer before.
No, but when you were on the island with them at Penrhyn, did you
Yes.
go to church?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so a typical day would start with church at, I think the service was at 6 in the morning or something. Like the sun hadn't come up yet, and we'd all be walking to church in our.
So the whole community walks to church.
Yeah,
basically.
or rides their bikes. Yeah, yeah, and we'd sit under the tree beforehand, and the men would talk a bit, and then we'd go into church, and this singing, this most amazing singing, and I'll never forget my first church service on Penrhyn. This was a Sunday service. It was middle of the day, something like that, and all the adults go into the church first, and they sit at the back, and then all the children come from the Sunday school, and they form this big long line from the youngest little Tamaliki child up to you go to Sunday school until you're about 40 on Penrhyn, and one by one we file in and we all take our seats, and then one little girl stands up and she starts to sing, and she doesn't just sing, but it comes from somewhere within, and this is the most amazing voice, and then everyone stands up and erupts in this amazing singing. There's no flourishes in the church. There's lights but no other electricity. You're not allowed to have your phones in there. You can't take pictures. It's very serious, somber at times, but the singing is just so powerful. And I stood there and I couldn't help but think about the position I was in the world right then. I was on this little tiny speck in the middle of the Pacific, and I just kept zooming out, and here we are on this little tiny speck, and there's this whole big Pacific around us, and it's 1,000 miles to get to the nearest shop. And here's this church full of these beautiful, happy people, and they're singing these songs, and it's just radiating out. And I felt that warmth within me again.
Wow.
Very, very special. Yeah. Very
Wow,
special.
sounds like that's like another beautiful mystical experience.
Yeah,
Of
it was.
the sound,
yeah.
like music transports you, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And communal when people are singing together, and like
Mm.
you said, it started off with that young girl, beautiful voice, and then
Yep.
the whole collective singing together. And wow.
Yes. Yeah. And they're all good singers, and they.
You kind of took me there on a journey. I was like, felt like I was standing in the church.
Good. That's.
With the wind,
I wish that everyone.
like you said, the windows. Did you say the windows were all open and the
Yes,
music was like
and
going
the
out?
breeze
and,
flows through, and you hear the crashing waves on the reef just outside,
Wow.
and yeah. So every day there was a little bit of magic like that, and then all the men would go to work, and there was always jobs to do on the island, maintenance and just keeping the island running. And
so you would help with the with the
yeah,
work.
yeah. I kind of, I didn't really have a, well, I suppose I had a choice, but I decided from the beginning I was just going to immerse myself as much as possible and do as much as I could, because there was not much else to do really. I may as well give a hand. And so we were building a new house for the minister. And so that was the main project while I was there.
The Minister of Penrhyn.
Yeah.
How many people on the island?
200. Yeah. And so all the men would come together each day, and we'd help to build this house. And there'd be a big lunch, a kai, a feast every day that the women would prepare. Sometimes I go fishing in the late afternoons with some of the men to catch fish for the families, do a bit of writing. And at night time, I'd have some dinner of fish and rice, always fish and rice. And then there'd always be drumming or singing practice that night. And so there's always activities. They keep very busy on the island. There's not really activities for them, but they make activities. They do projects. They find things to do to keep themselves busy and active. And in this way, they've formed this great and very successful community.
Sounds like there's a fair bit of celebration that happens
Absolutely.
as part of their...
Every birthday is a big deal, and everyone in the village gets invited to everyone's birthday.
Wow.
And big Christmas celebrations, big Easter celebrations. They sort of just go from one celebration to the next, and
Isn't that beautiful?
It's wonderful.
It actually reminds me of where I grew up in India.
Okay.
I mean, possibly not as... we had a really large community, but
Yes.
there would be every weekend, there was a community event of some sort that we all rocked up to.
Wow.
And so everyone kind of knew everyone. I
Yes.
had 100 brothers and sisters. I knew
Wow.
10 sets of parents and grandparents.
Yes.
But I think life doesn't have to be like on the island. I mean, it's nowhere near what you would have experienced on the island from what I'm hearing. But life doesn't have to be complicated.
No.
Life can be quite simple and yet bring so much joy through simple interactions, everyday stuff, and celebration is a big part.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which I think we don't often celebrate enough in Western society.
No. Even as a kid growing up in Brisbane, I was always craving more community. Like I was definitely friends with more of the neighbours than my parents were, and I put a swing in the park down the road, so it became a spot where people would come to that swing. So I was always craving that community in Brisbane, which was hard to find. But then coming to this island, and that was their whole life, was community.
Wow.
It was so refreshing. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, I think we're going to have to fast track.
We've
taken a long... I mean, I'm enjoying the conversation.
Yeah.
So we're just going to go straight... So you leave Penrhyn.
Yeah.
You were there for 4 months.
Yep.
And then your next leg is heading off to America. How far are you off from your trip? What happens after Penrhyn?
Sure. So Penrhyn was a bit over halfway across the Pacific.
Yeah.
And then after 4 months, I had to depart. That was very hard, very sad. The hardest departure of the trip.
Yes.
They all came out in a boat and they sung goodbye to me.
Aww.
They kept singing as I rowed away until I couldn't see them anymore. There was a lot of tears.
You've got some amazing memories.
Yeah, very, very lucky. And that was because of the generosity of the people there,
Yes.
really. So I left Penrhyn once again.
Look, this to me sounds like better than any education ever that anyone could have had on so many levels.
I was very lucky. Yeah,
anyway,
very lucky.
Sorry, I didn't. That just came to me. Go.
Yeah. No, it was an amazing education. Yeah. So I set off from Penrhyn once again, not knowing really where I was going to get to next, but still determined to cross the Pacific. And that second leg was pretty monotonous, I found. I didn't really see many ships, didn't catch many fish. I ended up contracting this terrible infection all over my legs. There's pussy wounds. It was very sore,
dear.
very painful. It was actually very dangerous. It could have been life-threatening, but I had some drugs on board which I took, which mitigated the infection. but I was still unwell. I was sick, and so I made the decision to aim for the next island I could.
Right.
So after over 30 days, 32 days, I think, I arrived to American Samoa, the island of Tutuila. And once again, I was arriving to this amazing place I'd never been to, never heard much about. And I was welcomed in by a family, and I rode up onto the beach, and I was pretty sick. And so I just laid on the beach, and I think I kind of passed out a bit there. Felt quite unwell. And this young man, same age as me, he said, "Hey, you all right?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I think so. Come to my house, I'll give you some fish and rice." And his family took me in, and they took me for a drive in their car. And so I hadn't seen a car, a road, a proper tree, like these land birds. I hadn't seen any of this stuff since I'd left South America 11 months previously. So it was just this amazing feeling of seeing and dealing with all these things that I hadn't had any contact with in so long. And we jumped in their car and they drove me to the shop. And I hadn't seen a shop in 11 months.
Wow.
We walk up and down
these... Penrhyn didn't have shops.
No shop there, yeah. So we walk up and down these aisles, and there's just all this glorious food. And they said, "Tom, you can have whatever you want." I just met these people and they took me in. And
isn't that amazing? The generosity to absolute stranger.
Yes, yeah. It's this all throughout the Pacific, the people are so welcoming. Yeah. So I think I got an orange or an orange juice or something like that. And I had that, and that was pretty amazing.
And then how long were you there for?
I stayed in American Samoa for about 5 weeks.
Okay.
That was just enough time to get better, to get motivated again about the trip.
And so you just park your boat somewhere along the shoreline?
I just anchored in the harbour there.
Right.
And I would...
And you got to do all the formalities or whatever.
Of stamping into a new country and all the customs, and they come and inspect your boat and all this sort of thing.
So then what happens? So you've healed yourself and you've left American Samoa, and then where do you go?
Then I headed off on the third leg of the journey, and I didn't know what I was going to hit next, but there's a lot of islands in the Western Pacific, and so I rode, and 52 days I was at sea on that leg, and that was a really hard leg. That was the time when the weather was the most unpredictable, the currents were the most unpredictable, and so it was often rough and wet, and I was chafing and sore, and the currents would sometimes push me backwards. And so this was all very difficult stuff, this leg. But after 52 days, I found myself approaching a little island called Gawa in Vanuatu. And same thing again, no knowledge of this little place, just a little map, basically. And I was rowing along this island, desperately trying to find a place to anchor, because I needed to anchor before it got dark. Otherwise, I couldn't stay near this island at dark, because I'd risk being washed onto the island and wrecked on the reef. I rowed until and there was no sign of life. There was no houses, no boats, nothing. It looked deserted, basically. Kept on rowing until I saw this little tiny thatched hut on the beach with a canoe next to it. And I was quite captivated by this image, and been rowing along, and there's breaking waves, and there's a little strip of calm just inside the breaking waves where this hut was. And I stood up from the boat, and I looked, and I saw this young boy come out of the hut, and he pointed at me, and then he ran back inside the hut, and this old man appeared, and they got this canoe off the beach, and they dragged it into the water, and they were coming out to me. So I realised that there was a chance of security and safety there. So I turned the boat around, Matewa, and I rowed back into the wind and the waves and the currents until I was in line with this hut again. And I saw, I'd rowed past it, but there was this little tiny entrance through the breaking waves, through the reef, into this little tiny pond of tranquility. So I made this decision that I was going to try and make it through this passage and into the calm area. And I had no idea how deep the water was, if I was going to get wrecked. I had no idea, but I wanted to, I really had no choice but to try and get through there. And all the while, this old man had paddled out, and he was giving me directions. He was inside the breaking waves and giving me directions to come in. And so I took a big, deep breath, and I pulled on the oars, and my span of the oars was just about as wide as this passage was. And I looked down, and it wasn't a smooth, sandy beach. It was rocky, jagged coral. So I was holding my breath, hoping that I didn't hit this coral and wreck the boat. But within three strokes, I made it through, basically 3 big pools, and I was through these breaking waves, this surf, and this old man came up to me and he said, "Hello, my name is Victor. Welcome to the island of Gawa." said, "Oh, thank you, Victor. My name's Tom. I've just rode from Samoa." He was totally
blown away.
Yeah, he couldn't really understand how far away
Yes.
Samoa was, and so I explained it to him.
And so all these people speak English.
Yes, they do. They've all got their own language as well, Samoan in Samoa.
You were
and
lucky that
Penrhyn
they
but
could communicate with you in English.
it made it so much easier.
Yeah.
It really did. So I had this chat with this man, and his wife was along the rocks there on the shore, and he said, "Excuse me, Tom, just one moment." And he paddled ashore, and the wife had husked the drinking coconut for me. And he paddled out, and he said, "This is a gift from my wife for you. She had tears in her eyes for you, Tom."
Wow.
So that's okay. I'm not the
such
shipwreck
heartwarming
sailor.
moments you've had, Tom.
Yeah.
And then like really restores your faith in humanity. You
Absolutely, yeah.
When you go do trips like this and like
I was someone in need, and they
people
only
just respond.
Yeah, they saw a
from the
chance to
heart.
help me, not to take advantage. Yeah.
Contrary to what we as a society believe, like there's a lot of not so much hope out there.
Yeah.
So tell me, so after that, what happens?
So I rode through the Vanuatu archipelago for a couple more weeks. I made my way to the provincial capital of Luganville. I stayed there for 4 weeks, which was enough time to buy some more supplies, get to know the locals, same thing again, be taken into someone's house and stay with them and all these sorts of things. And then I set off from Vanuatu on the last leg of the journey. There was no more islands between Vanuatu and Australia. I'd been at sea for 260 days.
So you're homeward bound now.
Homeward bound. I think I'm about 60 days away from reaching
Completing
Australia and completing my journey. And I left.
Exciting.
Absolutely exciting, yeah. I left Vanuatu. Few days out at sea, it was all good. And then everything changed on day 265 of days at sea. About day 5 of the last leg of the journey. I've been rowing all day quite comfortably, nothing out of the ordinary. I'd stayed dry all day, so the waves weren't that big. And I'd retired a bit early and was sitting in my cabin eating some food. And the thing you've got to realise about these ocean rowing boats, they're designed to self-right. So if they capsize, they will right again. If you keep that main hatch closed, because there's air trapped inside the cabin, and so the boat rights. And I tested all this before I left on the journey, and it all worked. And so I was sitting in the cabin, and I had the hatch open, which I did most of the time anyway, because it was calm enough that you could leave the hatch open and get some breeze through. Sitting in the cabin with no thought that possibly anything could go wrong, and all of a sudden I heard this great crashing sound, and the boat was just enveloped by this huge wave and tossed and turned until she was upside down. And
where were you?
I was inside the cabin. It flooded instantly because the hatch was open.
You were inside the cabin with the boat upside down?
Yeah, upside down. It filled with water instantly. I just went, oh my gosh. So I held my breath, or had to. And I pushed the hatch door open the rest of the way, and I swam out from the upturned hull, and I clung onto the side of the boat, treading water. And by this stage, the sun had set, and it was getting dark very quickly.
Gosh. And
it just hit me that the worst possible scenario had just become my reality. And it was very, very serious. And so I made
and
a couple...
it was dusk, you said?
Yeah, it was dusk. So it was getting dark quite quickly. So I made a few attempts to try and right the boat. I pulled on a rope to try and bring it over, but they were unsuccessful. And it was getting dark, and I knew that if I continued to try and right the boat during dark, it was going to be too dangerous. I was going to get hit by something and knocked out, and then it was going to be all over. And by this stage, the sea state was increasing. So I had...
What was increasing?
The sea state, the waves, the size of the waves. And so I had no choice but to climb up onto the upturned hull and sit there for the rest of the night. And that
so you're sitting on the top of an overturned boat?
Yeah. I tied myself on, and I held on as those waves were breaking over the boat, and they were trying to wash me off with every wave. So I was really holding on for dear life. I had an EPIRB on board.
What's an EPIRB?
It's a beacon that sends out a distress signal. And so I knew that was going off inside the boat. So I had to swim back under the boat, find this EPIRB, and then climb back onto the boat and hold on to it, and tied a lanyard around my wrist. And this thing was beeping and flashing.
What were your thoughts in your head at that time?
Yeah.
So it's dark now.
Yes, it's pitch black.
The boat is overturned. You're sitting on the top of the boat. You've tied yourself to the boat.
Freezing cold, and I'm
You're fully
holding
wet.
on. Yep. And for
And you've got this beam thing.
the beacon. I'm
Beacon.
holding on to it.
Does it make a noise?
It's beeping and flashing, and I'm just praying and hoping that someone hears it, as in it sends a message to the ships in the area and back to Australia.
Did you have your device that you could contact other ships?
No, that was in the cabin and that was gone, so I couldn't make any contact. And so, things got very dark very quickly. I kind of thought that at that moment that was it, and what's the point of holding on? Because I'm going to die anyway. I may as well just let go and get it over with. So that was a very sobering thought. But just like every other situation in the journey, when times got tough, I had to very quickly change my mindset and make a plan. And until you've got a plan, it's very easy just to let everything go, achieve nothing, and die helpless, basically. But I had to make a plan, and so I decided that I was going to make it through the night, and that I was going to survive, and that once the night was over, I was probably going to be able to get some food from the boat, and then I was going to get some strength back, and I was going to right the boat again by flooding certain sections, and might even continue on the journey. But I just had to make it through that night. And through the night, I knew that the moon would come up in a few hours' time, and I decided that was going to be a big deal. That was going to be exciting. So I was looking forward to that moment.
Wow.
I was always setting these little tiny goals to look forward to make it through the days or the weeks or the minutes or the hours or the seconds, whatever it is, just making it through. And so then the moon came up, and that was an achievement for me. I'd survived those 4 hours, and then I knew that I just had to keep holding on until the sun came up, and that once the sun came up, things were going to get much better. And so I was sitting there on this upturned boat, freezing cold, shivering, imagining a big bonfire in the middle of the boat to keep me warm. And I sang some songs, and I just began to feel very positive about the whole situation. And although I was in this absolutely life-threatening scenario, it was going to be okay. Things were going to be all right. And eventually I was looking out to the east the whole night, and eventually the blackness turned into a purple, into a grey, and then into a blue, and the sun came up, and I knew that things were going to get better. And not long after that, I saw this black dot on the horizon, and it was a ship. And
just to rewind just quickly, I know we've actually fully run out of time.
Yeah.
But I can't stop your story here. So how long was that night for you? Like you were sitting on the top of the boat?
14 hours. 14 hours. From the Capsize to being picked up.
So you were sitting on the upside down boat for 14 hours with strong mental strength to make it through that time, because you had decided, like you changed your mindset from hopelessness to hope,
absolutely,
and created a plan for yourself that you were going to survive and you were going to see through the morning, and then things would you could do more things to get yourself to a safe place. That's amazing. That's an absolutely. So it's a mind shift, a mental
absolutely
shift.
Yeah, and I had to do those all throughout the journey when things got tough. You know,
you would have developed an amazing sense of mental toughness, I would say.
Yes,
in this whole journey, and
And so I'd looked back on all the things I'd been through, and I thought all that is going to be harder than whatever tonight brings. And so if I can survive all that, then I can survive tonight.
And so then what happens? It's daylight and the sky is blue.
Yes, this blue appears, and the ship comes closer and closer, and I realised that was the first moment that I realised that that the journey had come to an end. Until then, I thought maybe things might change and I might continue on the journey. But from that point, I realised that it was all over and that it had come to an end. And so I just came to terms with it at that point and realised that I'd done well and done the best I could, and that was it. And so the ship came alongside, and they dropped the rope ladder down the side, and they came alongside. By this time there's big waves, and it's quite serious, quite dangerous. And I made this sort of great leap, and I clung onto the ladder, and I'd only then realised how weak I'd become because I'd been clinging onto this boat all night long. So it took a lot of my strength to climb up this ladder and into this ship. And what a strange feeling that was to step foot aboard this ship and realise that it was all over. Yeah, very surreal.
Oh my God, that's the most phenomenal story I've heard.
Yeah.
You are one amazing young man, Tom.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your most inspiring journey, challenge that you've taken on. We're going to have to end here soon.
Yes.
But I'm going to ask you one last question, and that is, you're a young 26-year-old man. You've got your whole life ahead of you. What advice would you give to young men or in their young 20s or even young teenage years to 20s, if you had to give any advice at all?
Oh, wow. I don't know if I'm qualified for that
Oh,
yet.
you're more than qualified.
What could I say? I think especially someone who's contemplating a journey or a path less trodden, let's say, if you're thinking about doing something, the first thing is I feel a lot of fear amongst people my age or a bit younger that they don't have enough time, that they've got to go to university, they've got to get a job, they've got to do all these things to keep their life on track. But like I'm only 26, but I look back on that period and there was a 3-year full-time project to do the journey. It was worth every second, absolutely worth every second. So it was not time wasted at all. I haven't come back and felt like I'm missing anything or I'm falling behind my peers. You've got the time. So go out and do it. The time's there, do it. And I think if you want to do something, make a plan, stick to it, and tell everyone you're going to do it. So at 14, I started telling everyone I was going to row the Pacific. And from that age till now, I was always known as, this is Tom. He's the guy who's going to do this trip. Right.
Amazing.
And so that kind of made me have to do it to some extent. And I'm glad I did. And so I just told everyone. And so I would say to anyone, even if you want to go hiking on the weekend or go ride your bike somewhere or travel overseas, row the Pacific, sail around the world, whatever it is that you want to do, tell people you're going to do it, make a plan and stick to it.
They'll hold you accountable.
Exactly. Yeah.
And just one last thing. What if you got anything to say to your mum and dad?
Oh, thank you, Mum and Dad. Thank you for giving me the freedom and supporting me. They never pushed me to do anything, but they never held me back either. And that was that perfect level there where if at any point during the journey I said I don't want to do this anymore, they would not have tried to encourage me either way. Okay, Tom, that's fine. That's your choice. So I'm so thankful that they had the resilience to let me do what I sort of needed to do. And so it's a big thank you to them.
Thank you so much, Tom, for being on the show. It's been an absolute privilege and an honor to have you sit here and share your amazing journey with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Carolyn. It's a pleasure. It really is.
So if you liked what you just heard on Your Neighborhood Show, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment because it would really help us get our stories out far and wide. And as you can see, everyone has an amazing story of connection and disconnection at times in our lives. And we don't need to think that somebody else has a better life than ours because every one of us has an amazing life. So go ahead, press that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you.